Hello everyone, and welcome to the recap of all things track of the day for January of 2026. Whether it be the authors of said tracks, the styles of them, Cup of the Day winners, world record holders, or many of the other various stats, I'll have them all here for you today. The first category we'll be taking a look at is the authors themselves because, well, without them, we wouldn't have any tracks in the first place. Now, to keep things a little bit more consistent, just like I do in my daily shorts, an author must either create the track or be featured in the title to get credit. So with that said, the month of January ended up with 38 different credited authors, of which there was only one who was lucky enough to take part in multiple, and that someone was Artroy, who made 2 and was featured on 1. Artroy even had tracks on back-to-back days. January also gave us 7 creators who were part of their first track of the day, including Astra, Darklight, Frankfurt, Frank the Hamster, Humble, Calvination, and Magor. Unfortunately, not all was well for Frank the Hamster and Artroy's, whose track collaboration resulted in this month's lowest rated track. Now, before we get into those ratings, the scoring system here can be a little confusing, so I'll explain it as quickly and simply as I can. First of all, these scoring and ratings are unofficial, and they come from a Discord bot that gathers players' votes. Now, the highest score possible using this bot is a score of +3, and the lowest will be a -3, and every score ending in a 0.5 in either direction will take you to the next rating tier. This means a score of 0.5 would get you a plus rating, and a 1.5 would therefore be a plus, and the same can be for the negatives. A negative 0.5 means a minus, and so on. So with that out of the way, the month of January had 15 tracks that scored positively and 15 negatively, and 1 having a score of 0. For the 15 positively rated tracks this month, the highest rated one was Prof 10's First Horizon, which had a score of 1.4, a very high plus, and a 0.1 score from a plus. As for the other 14 positively rated tracks, there were 10 that received a plus rating, and 4 of the positive scores resulted in a neutral. As for the negative scores, 3 of them were neutral ratings, 7 were minus ratings, and 5 of them resulted in minus ratings. Now, the lowest score, like I said previously, was on Frank the Hamster's and Artroy's collaboration track Against the Current, which received a score of -2.3, that is minus 0.2 score from a triple minus. Now, to round out the ratings category, despite there being the same number of positively and negative rated tracks, the negatives outweighed the positives, and the average score for January's tracks ended up at a -0.2, a low neutral. But what wasn't neutral about January was the bias towards certain track styles. January had 13 different styles of track showcased, with mixed by far leading the way and accounting for nearly 25% of the tracks chosen, with 8 in total. Behind mixed was tech, accounting for 4 tracks. Dirt, Speed Fun, and Speed Tech were next in line with 3 apiece, and full speed and surprisingly rally tracks were featured twice. That'll leave us with 6 other tracks of various styles, and one of which will be the Ice track made by Teuty and Darklight, which had one of the most difficult author medals of the month. January had quite the array of author medal difficulty, including 2 tracks which at their day's end had just 1 player with the author medal. Those tracks would be the Tech track Roll the Dice by Magor, and the Speed Tech track Teuty, which was made by Sky and Proof. Like I previously mentioned as well, the Ice track Vushentile by Teuty and Darklight had just 2 players with the author medal. On the other side of the spectrum, 1 track stood out amongst them all as the easiest, and that was Athaflexa made by Ronfra, which nearly 7,200 players had the author medal on. The next closest to that sees about a 5,000 player drop, with Victim to My Brain having about 2,250 players with it, and Unbreakable with about 2,100. And speaking of Unbreakable, it also happened to be the longest track of the month. Going strictly by author times, there was a difference of nearly 20 seconds between the longest and shortest tracks of January. Again, we have the track Unbreakable being the longest, with an author time shy just of 1 minute at 57.557 seconds, and the shortest this month will be Infiltration by Laura, which was 37.632 seconds. For January as a whole, the average author time this month came in at 44.96 seconds, which came unbelievably close to the author time on Ripfish's track Fat Cat, which had an author time of 44.962 seconds. Now, the author times themselves show some, but not all, with Unbreakable still being the longest track by its world record time of 54.867 seconds. However, the track Really Rally by Calvination actually wound up being the shortest by its world record time of 32.807 seconds. The month of January had 23 different world record holders, with the player Matt Lightning holding their one and only record on said Really Rally track, and the same could be said for Lingo on Unbreakable. January would also feature 5 different players with multiple world records, including the players Josh, Megorian, Maui, and Sky, all holding 2, but leading the way this month was Propanoia, who came away with 5 world records. With that said, January would apparently have a no streaking allowed policy in this category, as there were no players with back-to-back days with world records. Streaking, though, would however seem to be encouraged in Cup of the Day. Before we get into those streakers, let's quickly look at how many players actually participated in January's Cup of the Days. On average, in the month of January, there are about 2,087 participants for each Cup of the Day, with the most amounts unsurprisingly coming with January 27th's game update, with 2,858 participants. The next highest came on the days surrounding it. The 26th and 28th had 2,358 and 2,348 qualified players respectively. As for the fewest number of qualified players this month, that would be 1,770, which was on Artroy's rally car track Mining Valley, released on January 12th. But with that amount of participants, who actually won these Cup of the Days? January would have 17 different Cup of the Day winners, meaning there was a plethora of victories between some players, and probably some streaking by them as well. Leading the way in January and accounting for nearly 1/3 of the month's total victories was Grenady, who won 10 different cups, and also had the highest win streak of the month at 3. Behind Grenady was Scrappy, who ended up with 5 wins and a streak of 2, and the only other player this month with multiple wins was Mime, who had 2, which did come on back-to-back days. January would also feature 3 first-time winners, so congratulations to Marincha, Timebreaker, and Disc for all getting their first. And speaking of first, that was the final category of this first edition of this new monthly series of Track of the Day recaps. I hope I was able to provide every meaningful stat that I could, but if you have anything that you'd like to see potentially added for future iterations, feel free to leave a comment below. But again, that's it for today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all for February's recap.